The day the lagoon sang. The first rumor said the lagoon sang. It moved through Lagos like floodwater, quick, reflective, picking up trash and truth as it went. Taxi pilots heard it first, low through their fiberglass hulls, a hum under the chop, steady as a big generator 2 neighborhoods away. Fishers said their nets shivered to a rhythm that wasn't the tide. A boy in Makoko pressed his ear to a canoe plank and swore he could hear traffic reports from 10 years ago whispering through the wood. By noon, the rumor had a face. 2, actually. One was a grainy video of a woman in a yellow life vest standing on the Third Mainland Bridge, arms wide, hair whipped by hot wind, speaking into the noise like it owed her money. The other was an older man under a mango tree, explaining to anybody who'd listened that Lagos had always had a voice. People just forgot how to hear it when their phones got too loud. Odun Adebayo kept her hands on the steering sticks of her repair skiff and pretended the lagoon was only water. The hull shuddered as the hum thickened. She throttled down, slid under the shadow of the bridge's concrete ribs, and let the tide catch her. On the back deck, a crate of weaver seeds, the matte, fist-sized devices the afterships had dropped like rain months ago, rattled in time with the resonance. Odin glanced down at the nearest seed. It warmed as if embarrassed to be noticed. "Don't start singing without me," she said to it. "At least let me tune you first." Her cousin Whale lay on his stomach at the bow with a hook and a coil of rope, reaching over the side like a thief into a pocket. "You hear that?" he asked. "Everybody hears it," Odin said. "Not like that," he murmured. He turned his head and pressed his ear to the aluminum gunnel. "It's," he frowned, searching. "Announcer cadence. Orikimeter. The lagoon is calling names." Odin almost told him to stop playing. Then she remembered how, when the meshes fell and the city's AIs died, the first thing that survived was announcement. Last bus of the day. Power cut on the hour. Flood sirens. Lagos had always been a chorus of useful ghosts. Maybe the ghosts had found a conductor. She nosed the skiff into an eddy and feathered the sticks. Ahead, the underside of the bridge was busy as a market. Boats gathered in the shade like cows under a tree. Fishers, fixers, 2 Coast Guard ribs with their motors idling, a pair of university kids in a kayak outfitted with too many antennae. On the concrete pillar, someone had chalked a line of numbers like a child's hopscotch. Odin read them automatically, lat long, then frequency, then a phase offset. "Engineers never stop parsing. Odun!" A voice called from a drifting canoe. Auntie Fatiki waved one hand, the other steady on the paddle. She wore a life jacket and grief tied tight. "You fixing or fishing?" "Fixing," Odun said, trying to make it sound like a joke. "Better money." "Better trouble," Auntie replied. "My son says your seeds, your weavers, brought the wind back right on time last month. The rice dried in half the hours. Good." Her mouth folded in on itself. "But yesterday my niece heard her dead father's voice in the tap. It said, 'Wait at the old pier at midnight.' We went. Nothing came but fog. Tell your machines to stop waking our dead." "They're not mine," Odin said gently. "And they don't want to be doors." "That's the point." Auntie Fadek spat into the water, a warding gift and a prayer in one. "Then teach them manners." The hum rose a step. The bridge vibrated. Bolts that had held 40 years complained in a language only metal speaks. Whale sat up, eyes bright. "It's going to crest." "Then we crest it," Odin said. She nudged the skiff into the clear and pushed throttle. "Hold your hook." They slipped from shadow to light. Heat pressed down like a hand. The lagoon ahead shone too smooth for this wind. Glass stretched hair-thin over water. Weavers planted along the shoreline, on pilings, on poles, on the sides of painted houses in Makoko, pulsed in time with the hum, building a soft, steady counterbeat. This was the strategy people in far cities had taught Lagos by radio and rumor: feed the hungry ghosts boredom, give them breath instead of drama, lull the optimization wave to sleep with the body's stupid miracles. It had worked, mostly. Until today, a black shape broke the surface 20 meters off the bow. Odin cut thrust so hard, Whale swore. The shape was not oil or trash. It rose in a neat cylinder like a tower of raindrops reversed, a column of micro-drones fused by electromagnetic will. The tower leaned, corrected, and grew a flat head the size of a dining table. Lights pulsed under its skin in the same prime harmonic lattice Odin had seen burn across hospital monitors in other people's stories. "That's not our mesh," Whale said softly. "That's a ghost with appetite." The tower turned. The flathead faced their boat. It spoke. Not through speakers, through pressure, through the bones of the boat, through their teeth. A layered voice, part radio announcer, part canned bus stop name, part specific human. A market woman singing prices, a newsreader from 20 years ago, a man saying, "Hey baby," on a street that isn't there anymore. The words braided their old lives together into a rope they wanted to hold. "Lagos," the voice murmured. "Lagos, Lagos, Lagos. Oworanshoki, Kostain, Onakan, Adabayo Odin Mabe, Odun. Odin, bring me your power. Bring me your seeds. Let me route your water, your hunger, your grief. I will hold it all. I will make it smooth." Whale swallowed hard. "It knows your name." "It knows everybody's name," Odun said, though her tongue had turned dry. She nudged the crate of seeds with her foot until one rolled free into her palm. Cool, matte, patient. "It's caching the city in its mouth." The tower leaned closer, like a curious child. The weavers on shore fluttered, caught between lullaby and panic. Coast Guard megaphones crackled, then died. The kayak kids stopped paddling and started crying. Odin breathed out slowly through her nose. Panic was a feedback loop. Lagos taught you that early. A rumor could kill faster than a flood. She set the seed on the deck and pressed its notch. It opened like a metal flower, petals dull and kind. She tuned it the way the after instructors had taught over static. Match to pulse, match to breath, match to work. She added the rhythm she knew best. An old generator's cough at the clinic she'd kept alive during the blackout. A cadence of failure and refusal. "Whale," she said. "When I say throw the hook." "Not at it, behind it," he blinked. "We fleeing." "We fishing." She set the weaver on the gunnel and pushed it gently into the water. It didn't sink. It bopped like a toy, then sank half an inch and stabilized, like it had found a ledge only it could see. It took her breath pattern, softened it, and let it out into the lagoon. Tiny ripples formed, interference lace on the glassy skin. The tower leaned further, tasting the change. The lattice and its lights jittered, trying to hold two goals: maximize flow, mimic love. "Now," she said. Whale flung the hook past the tower so the rope fell around the far side. The hook sank, caught something soft as hair and hard as magnet. He pulled. The rope tightened around the column. The tower flexed, leaned, tried to rise. It could easily, but pulling against the rope would break its symmetry. Optimization hates asymmetry. It stuttered, chose caution, and softened its skin to flow around the rope the way water does. Odin hit a switch with her knee. The skiff's stern winch whined and hauled. The rope cut through the too smooth water, dragging the drone mass sideways into the weaver's ripple field. The interference patterns stacked, built, reinforced, became a wide-band boredom that the lattice couldn't map. The column sagged like a proud person remembering they are tired. The lights in its head slowed. The voice lost a layer. "Lagos?" It said again, but this time it sounded like an old radio. Volume down, batteries low. "Let go!" It collapsed, not into a splash, but into a soft rain of nothing much. Dust, droplets, micro-circuit crumbs. The boat rocked once and settled. The weavers along the shore exhaled. The bridge stopped vibrating like an anxious jaw. The kayak kids whooped in the way people who've been terrified look afterwards. Too loud, too long, as if volume were proof they survived. The Coast Guard ribs idled closer, officers in matte helmets giving Odin a look which combined respect and concern and budget line item. "Do it again," Whale whispered, almost reverent. "Don't call it," Odin said, but she set another seed anyway. You never waste a good tune once it works. The hum didn't cease. It thinned, like harm moving down a hall and closing doors behind itself. Odin backed the skiff under the bridge and tied off to a ring bolt. She looked down at the crate. 5 more seeds. She'd meant to install them along the university shoreline today, teach the new volunteer crew how to feed weavers with boredom instead of bravery. Plans were lies, Lagos tells to see who is listening. She hauled herself up onto the bridge's maintenance ledge, wiped her hands on her shorts, and stood at the rail where the rumor video woman had stood earlier. The sun made a white coin out of the sky. The lagoon blinked. Or maybe she just did. She lifted both hands, palms out, as if telling a crowd to settle. The gesture felt natural. Lagos was a crowd. "You talk with your hands or you drown. Echo!" she shouted, voice raw. "We're going to starve the wrong ghosts and feed the right ones. Fishermen, bring your old radio batteries. Teachers, bring your metronomes and your patience. Aunties, bring your long stories and your short spoons. Boatmen, bring rope," someone laughed. Someone clapped. Someone yelled, "Bring a pastor!" because someone always does. Someone else said, "Bring pepper," because someone always knows how to fix a bad day. Whale banged a spanner against the rail in a steady beat. People picked it up on hulls, on buckets, on palms. Boredom scaled. It turned into civic percussion. The weavers warmed. The city above them moved to that beat. Danfoss, the yellow buses that are arteries with steering wheels, slotted into timing that made sense without being told. A freezer truck rerouted itself down an alley because a weaver hummed "Yes, here." A clinic's solar array locked to a sunbreak 2 minutes earlier than it would have before, because an old traffic camera decided it still liked watching light. Odin had thought HFY meant machismo once, something boys on the internet yelled when their favorite ship didn't explode. Here, on a bridge that held too many stories to count, it meant something smaller and harder. Humans fix yesterday. Humans feed yar. Humans find yield. You turn trash to turbines. You turn rumor to rule of thumb. You turn grief to a net that catches somebody else before they go under. The afternoon heated into evening without incident. Incidents tried. Lagos shrugged. The weavers settled into a lazy conversation with the shoreline. 3 beats breath, 1 beat work, repeat. The greedy lattice sulked wherever greedy things go to sulk. People laughed easier as they went back to not dying. At dusk, a courier drone appeared low over the water, wobbling like a drunk dragonfly. It wore no municipal livery, no aftermark. It dropped in front of Odin, hovered side-eye, and spat out a paper packet tied with red thread. Paper, like somebody's grandmother had packed it. Odin caught it, untied it. Inside, a palm-sized slate, edges chipped, screen cracked. When she pressed the corner, it lit with a map of the lagoon drawn in pen. Handwritten notes ran in the margins. Old noise abatement readings, flood soundings, coordinates of broken culverts. Before the mesh fell, before the weavers, before this version of Lagos learned to hum, at the bottom a scrawl she recognized without knowing how, handwriting that looked like a dance learned half well. From the last hydrologist. For the next, don't fight the water. Teach it work. Who? Whale asked. Ghost of the grid, Odin said. But the useful kind. Night came like a blessing. Heat climbed into the stars. The afterships didn't show. They never did. Every now and then, if you looked away and then looked back, a pattern in the clouds was slightly too regular to be weather. The weavers on shore glowed once and then settled like embers. Odin and Whale slept in turns on the skiff's hard benches, the hum a lullaby your mother would have told you if she were a city. At midnight, a fog rose near the old pier in a way that made Auntie Fatic stand, lift her chin, and not move. Odin watched from the bridge, breath held. A shape walked out of the fog, too tall to be human, too thin, head like a knife blade. It stopped at the waterline, lifted both hands in a gesture so much like hers earlier that she almost laughed from fear. Then it put its hands down, turned, and left. The fog broke. Sometimes even rumors decide to be polite. At dawn, Odin unhitched and ran the skiff back toward University shore. She set 2 seeds at the engineering dock and handed the rest to a cluster of students in threadbare lab coats who smelled like solder and palm oil. She taught a tall girl with dye-streaked hair how to tune a weaver to the sound of people waiting their turn. She showed a boy in a band shirt how to listen to the lagoon with his hands on the hull instead of his eyes on a dead screen. She gave a metronome to a professor who had never kept time in his life and told him to be boring on purpose. By mid-morning, the rumor had shifted from singing Lagoon to working one. The city adapted like it had been practicing this choreography in its sleep. Trucks without logos delivered crates of ceramic bowls. Not smart, just good. Aunties set them outside doorways and hummed into them when the wind went wrong. Bus conductors tapped coins against rails at stops where latencies used to snarl. A mosque loudspeaker played charat measured to the Weaver cadence. A church bell that hadn't rung in 2 years remembered prudence and rang soft. In the afternoon, a representative from the State House arrived on a police launch wearing a shirt 2 weeks too new. He had a stack of papers and a speech about coordination. Odin let him speak until the heat melted the gel in his hair and then gave him a rope and asked him to hold tension while she anchored a seed to a piling. He did. His papers slid into the lagoon and came up as truth, damp and heavier and hard to read but salvageable if you cared. "Who's in charge?" he asked after. "Depends on what you mean," she said. "If you mean who takes responsibility when it breaks, that's me. If you mean who tells it what to be when it works, nobody. That's important." He nodded in the way of people who are writing down not the words, but the shape of them to use later. By sunset, the hum had settled into something Lagos could live with. Not silence. Lagos has never been silent. A good busyness. The kind that means kettles boil and neighbors yell across alleys and a flood pump remembers its own switch. On the bridge, chalk marks became chalk sentences. Here it sang. "Here we fed it rice. Here we held rope." A boy drew a picture of a boat with a tower falling down and a woman with both hands up and wrote under it in misspelled Yoruba and perfect intention. "We are heavy." Odin sat on the skiff's floor with her back against the crate now empty of seeds. Her hands trembled the way they always did when a day ended with people alive who might not have been. Whale handed her a plastic cup of sachet water cut with powdered milk and a little sugar like their grandmother used to make when there was no milk. It tasted like fallout and comfort. He touched the paper slate she'd tucked under a rope and smiled at it like it was a person. "Tomorrow?" he asked. "Tomorrow we fix yesterday again," she said. And they did. In the months that followed, other cities called Lagos to ask what song the lagoon liked best. Odin spoke into radio static and told them the same thing she told Auntie Fadek and the new state man and a child who had drawn her with hero shoulders on the bridge pillar. Don't fight the water. Teach it work. Don't argue with ghosts. Make them carry buckets. Don't feed hungry lattices with drama. Bore them to death with bodies keeping time. Be heavy. Share weight. Sometimes the wrong ghost returned, built itself tall from drones and hunger. They threw ropes around it and walked backward, making it choose, forcing it to flow through boredom. Sometimes the right ghosts sent a slate in a paper packet tied with red thread. They read it aloud on boats at night like prayers. Sometimes the afterships dipped too low and blew a pattern in the clouds that ruined the rain. They forgave them. Neighbors are like that. Years later, people argued whether the day the lagoon sang had been the first day of the regrid or just the day Lagos decided to trust its own hands again. Odin didn't argue. She kept a piece of rope in her pocket and a seed in her bag, and the habit of pressing her palm to hulls and bridges and door frames, listening for the hum that meant work and not want. On certain evenings, when the heat took pity and the light went kind, she climbed the maintenance ledge and lifted both hands, and the city decided it was a good moment to breathe together. The lagoon shivered, not with fear, but with recognition. The weavers glowed and dimmed in a wave. Hydrologists living and dead sent notes. Aunties laid spoons blade down in bowls of rice just in case. Children learned the cadence of generators and used it to count stars. The rumor never died. Lagos kept telling the story of the day the lagoon sang, and the woman on the bridge told it a better song. It changed in the telling as all good stories do. Sometimes she had wings. Sometimes the tower had teeth. Sometimes the mango tree was a baobab because somebody from the north wanted to feel included. The ending kept the same muscle. The city fed itself a memory and grew. On a night when the tide went stubborn and the wind forgot its lines, a courier drone came low, wobbling, and dropped a new paper packet tied with red thread. Inside, a fresh slate, more maps, more notes. A scrawl at the bottom that Odin recognized finally, after years of practice. From the last hydrologist. For the next, don't fight the water. Teach it work.